So, why should the philosopher welcome death? Well, who is the philosopher? The philosopher is the lover of knowledge. Not necessarily the possessor of knowledge, but the one who loves it, the one who pursues it, the one who values it over all else. And what we get in the next few pages, let's say starting on the bottom of 52, and then continuing really, I guess, to the end of this section in on page 59, is a kind of maybe not an argument, but a description. First of all, that the human being is made up of soul and body, and that death is the separation of the two. That's an important thing to keep in mind during the whole dialogue. That is Socrates' belief, that death is not the end of the person. Death is the separation of two parts of the person, of the human being, the soul and the body. The body, of course, is mortal. The body dies, decays, and dissolves. Socrates holds fast throughout the dialogue to the belief that the soul is something different. That the soul, and how we'll think of that is, let's say, the soul is the life force, and it's the mind, too. It's the mind of the human being. It's the subjectivity, the part that thinks and experiences and animates the self. But really it's the mind and the intellect. That the soul is something different. And one of the things that he says that's very important about the relationship between the soul and the body is that they are at odds. For instance, in the bottom of page 53, he says, "What again shall we say of the actual requirement of knowledge? Is the body, if invited to share in the inquiry, a hinderer or a helper? I mean to say, have sight and hearing any truth in them? Are they not, as the poets are always telling us, inaccurate witnesses? And yet, if even they are inaccurate and indistinct, what is to be said of the other senses? For you will allow that they are the best of them." "Certainly," he replied. Socrates then says, "Then when does the soul attain truth?" Remember, truth, that's it for the philosopher. That's what he or she wants. "For in attempting to consider anything in company with the body, she is obviously deceived." Yes, that is true. "Then must not existence be revealed to her in thought, if at all?" Yes. So, for Socrates, the body is a distraction. This is what we get from this section, that the body is a hinderer. The body deceives us in terms of our desires and our senses, in terms of our pursuit of truth. So, the separation of the soul and the body, if indeed the soul does live on and is now free and independent of the body, is the time when the philosopher can gain real truth. Before, the philosopher could get some hint of truth if he or she worked really hard and pursued dialectics, pursued philosophy. But now that the soul is actually separate from the body, separate from the thing that deceives it, then the soul now has a chance to gain true knowledge. But what is true knowledge, according to Socrates? Very important. On page 54, he continues, says, "Then must not existence be revealed to her in thought, if at all?" Yes. "And thought is best when the mind is gathered into herself, and none of these things trouble her, neither sounds, nor sights, nor pain, nor any pleasure, when she has as little as possible to do with the body, and has no bodily sense or feeling, but is aspiring after being." That is true. And in this, the philosopher dishonors the body. His soul runs away from the body and desires to be alone and by herself. That is true. "Well, but there is another thing, Simmias. Is there or is there not an absolute justice?" Assuredly there is. "And an absolute beauty and absolute good?" Of course. "But did you ever behold any of them with your eyes?" Certainly not. "Or did you ever reach them with any other bodily sense? And I speak not of these alone, but of absolute greatness and health and strength, and of the essence or true nature of everything. Has the reality of them ever been perceived by you through the bodily organs? Or rather, is not the nearest approach to the knowledge of their several natures made by him who so orders his intellectual vision as to have the most exact conception of the essence of that which he considers?" this will come up again, not too far away, not too long, further in the dialogue, the so-called theory of the forms. For Socrates, knowledge is knowledge of the essence, of the universal, of the form. There are particular things. There are particular beautiful things, let's say. We could go to an art museum and we could find particular beautiful objects. Why are they beautiful? They're beautiful for Socrates and for Plato because in some way or another they participate in the true form, the essence of beauty, which is not a physical thing, not a particular thing, but an idea, an intellectual thing. And it's that which makes all the things beautiful, and it's that which is responsible for them being beautiful. Now, we can appreciate the beauty of an individual thing, but according to Plato, that beauty that any individual thing could display is only a partial form of beauty, only a partial view of it. And then it's up to the philosopher to try to grasp it as a whole. So the body itself is always tying us to particular things, tying us to the world, but it's the mind, the soul, the intellect that strives after the thing itself, beauty itself, justice itself, the good in itself. And when the soul is separated from the body is when it really has no distractions, no deceptions from the senses, and can really experience these things in their true form. So, that's Socrates' view, and that is his explanation for why he's, at least on the surface, not unhappy. I mean, he's not exactly jumping for joy, knowing that he'll be drinking hemlock in an hour or so. But he's sticking to his guns. That is, he's a true philosopher in the sense that he really thinks that knowledge and truth are the most important things, and he really believes that it's something that can only be grasped with the intellect. And if the intellect is freed in the form of the soul, if it's freed from the body at death, then for the first time it can really get truth. So philosophy, he says, is kind of a preparation for this. We try to prepare our souls to separate them as much from the body as we can, not to be tied down to the things of the body, so that we prepare for the afterlife where the soul will be by itself. And he has this idea that if your soul is pure, if it hasn't been dragged down by you giving in to your desires during your life, then it will be free and light and able to see truth. So that's where we get to about page 59.